Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS and betting preview for this week's Arnold Palmer Invitational. Gonna get you guys ready for all of your exposure. With first off, a look at my custom modeling and key stats for this week that I'm using to identify my top plays, and then afterwards we're gonna go through all my exposure, including our DFS core plays, value plays down towards the bottom to help you save a little bit of salary, as well as some outright bets and some top 5 and top 10s that have already entered for this event. Last week at the Cognizant, of course, my hometown event, was a whole lot of fun out there in person. Might head up to the API over the weekend, but our exposure overall ended up going rather nicely. Of our outright bets, 8 of our 10 finished in the top 30, and though we didn't crack the outright card again, another close call back-to-back weeks for us, I really like where our process is headed, and DFS has been on a roll for a month at this point, so let's keep it going. Hop on in with first off a look at our key stats and modeling out here for the API. Bay Hill Club and Lodge is what I'd qualify as a big boy golf course. It plays over par most years, sometimes even a winning score in the single digits under par, and you've got 4 or 5 inch rough greens that have some speed to them and some undulation, and really a test across the board. So if you're looking for some carnage after last week's birdie fest over there at the Cognizant, you might be getting exactly what you're looking for this week. But in terms of what I'm looking for in players, this is a ball strikers fest, and a course where you have to play strategically and for some bogey avoidance. So up towards the top, not a surprise that we still have approach at number 1, but we are looking at some of the long irons a little bit more. If you guys saw my course breakdown, which I posted a little bit early on today, I will have a link to that in the description of the video. You'll see that from 175 to 225, there's some extra emphasis around this course. So in my modeling, putting a little bit more stock into those 2 proximity buckets, but it's a pretty balanced profile outside of that. Off the tee, you need to be accurate and long off the tee here. Accuracy comes into play for a lot of the more strategic holes. You do have water in play on 9 of the 18 holes around here, but you also have to have some length and some ball speed to get out of that 4 or 5 inch rough as it grows when we get to Saturday, Sunday. So it's really important to have both of those aspects of your game, hence why I'm looking mostly at shots gained off the tee, which is a good measure of putting those 2 together. In terms of your bogey avoidance, it's always important, especially when we get some wind here at Bay Hill. Your putting stats, you can look at some Bermuda grass baseline stuff, as we do have Bermuda grass greens this week, but mostly some form. And over here on the bet the number model, they were really honing in on that 4 to 12 foot putting, so also something that I threw into my modeling. And the reasoning for that is they're trying to look at guys that could save some par, because you're going to have a lot of those from 4 to 8 feet this week. And also on the more positional holes where you're hitting a wedge in, a lot of the layup par 4s, you're going to be setting up something within 12, maybe 15 feet of the hole for birdie. So I like that they're looking for players that can convert in that range, as that has been a key separator at this golf course over the years. Shots gained around the green, a little bit more important at this event than what we typically see. And then for our comp courses, I've got Muirfield Village and the Memorial, as well as the Torrey Pine South course over there for the Farmers Insurance Open. Our first core play is going to be our only outright bet at this point, but plenty of top 5 and 10s that we'll be mixing in, and that's Rory McIlroy at plus 850. He's $10,800 in DFS, and you can see over here is my number 1 ranked play in the field. So yes, that means Scotty's there at number 2, but Rory, because of some of that recent form, has made his way towards the top end of my rankings. So if we go to the last 12 measured rounds, you'll see why the form looks so good. Over the last 12 rounds, gaining over a stroke per round out there off the tee, also about half a stroke per round there with the approach play, and really the putter, which has still been decent over the last few events, has actually been into the negative with the shots gained. So you would argue that he's got a little bit of room for improvement there, especially at a golf course here in Bay Hill that has been very favorable for him long term. I'm talking about almost a top 10 in every start that he has here. He's got a win around Bay Hill, also a bunch of top 4, top 5 finishes to boot. So you're talking about a player that is custom built for this sort of course, long and accurate off the tee, and him going out there and gaining over 1.1 shots gained off the tee per round has been because of that accuracy aspect. He's always one of the longest players that we have out here in Tour, but he's gone out there and hit the ball a lot straighter here in 2025. And if he can continue that at a golf course with 4 or 5 inch rough, you're talking about him gaining 1.5 to 2 shots gained off the tee per round. That alone could get him up there into that top 20, let alone if you add on top of that the form of the iron play and short game. So Rory McIlroy, a player that's been a horse course here around Bay Hill, number 1 in my modeling, got a 93% made cut rate, which by the way, there is a cut this week. It'll be the top 50 in ties, and I believe anyone within 10 shots of the lead as well, that's making it to the weekend. Rory, I'm not worried about that with, right? He's got that kind of skill set to go out there, get the job done, and a few other books, he was closer to plus 800, maybe plus 750 on sites like Draftkings and FanDuel, so a slightly better number available over there on Hard Rock Bet made him really easy to get to. But number 1 model ranking play, looking like a little bit of value across the industry, is going to be my single bullet as of now in terms of even outright. Next up though, we got a top 5 bet over here with Tommy Fleetwood, $9,100. I think worthy of a few lineups over there in DFS. I think he'll have some ownership, probably be closer to about 15, maybe even 17.5% owned. But at $9,100, I think he's got plenty of that top 5, top 10 equity. The main thing with Tommy Fleetwood lately has been the iron play, where you can see he's gaining over a stroke per round. In fact, just like Rory, over 1.1 strokes in that category. And off the tee is one of the more well-balanced players that we have in the world. He's got some distance to him, maybe not an elite tier bomber, but is also one of the most accurate drivers that we have in this sort of field. So with the off the tee having so much emphasis this week, the iron play being exactly what we're looking for, and a pretty decent course history out here as well. You know, last year maybe not the best over there with the missed cut, but does have a top 20, also a top 10 finish in his repertoire around here, and at major championship sort of golf courses. And you know, this isn't a major, so we can't make it 100% comparison, but this plays like what we have at a PGA Championship or US Open, and Tommy Fleetwood is just a top 5, top 10 machine at those sort of events. And given that he's in some of the best iron form of his entire career, is why I'm looking to get some exposure. So long term, he's my number 3 course fit that we have here, number 4 when it comes to total model ranking in the longer term stuff. So if we zoom out a little bit more on Tommy Fleetwood, it all holds up, right? He's still gaining over a stroke approach per round, still gaining off the tee, which is exactly what we're looking for there. A very consistent stat profile from the last 24 to the last 12 measured rounds. So we kind of know what we're getting over there with Tommy Ladd, right? He's been playing the same way for quite some time. And if he ever finds a spike putting week on these Bermuda greens, which long term have been favorable for him over some of his recent splits, then that's where you could get a top 5 or even a win out there for Fleetwood. Now, I wouldn't be betting him to win one of these signature events. I think at some point he's finally going to break through, but in this top 5, top 10 market, that is where he's proven to be very profitable long term. So that's why I took that sort of bet out there for my exposure, and it helps when I've got a single bullet out there on Rory McIlroy, who's less than 10 to 1 on the card already. Next up, we got Viktor Hovland for a top 10 at plus 375. So we're zooming out a little bit, right? Not quite taking that top 5 like we had with Fleetwood, but Viktor Hovland has started to look a lot better over his last 12 to 24 rounds. So if we zoom into the last 12, you'll see that he's gaining in the 2 ball striking categories, but most specifically, and I was really deep diving this over there on my course breakdown. So if you guys already saw that, you'll know Viktor Hovland was towards the top of that 175 to 225 range. Also, really good iron play over his last 36 measured rounds. So if we zoom out a little bit more on Hovland, you'll see the iron play gets even better than what you've seen over the last 12. So the swing has seemingly been figured out. He's both a long and an accurate player off the tee, kind of like a Tommy Fleetwood. He's got that elite combination of distance and accuracy. And I would argue that Hovland, when he's playing his best golf, you know, on a spike week like what we're hoping for, is an even better driver than Tommy Fleetwood because he has a little bit of added distance. Add that with the fact that his long irons have been on point lately. He's also a much better putter on Bermuda grass than what we've seen over the last 24 measured rounds. He's pretty much the same play as Fleetwood, right? They're playing the same sort of golf. I'd say that Tommy Fleetwood has a little bit better iron form than what you have with Viktor Hovland, but essentially the same sort of stat profile, the same kind of fit over there on Bermuda grass. Hence why Fleetwood is a little bit more expensive, why we took him for the top 5 as opposed for the top 10. But those sort of players, grinded out ball strikers that can go out there and hit a bunch of fairways and hit it a long way, are guys that I'm going to be using in a lot of my exposure. So just another example of one of the core plays that I'm getting to. And unlike these top 2, Rory will be chalky this week. You kind of got to know that out there with a 10K player. I think Fleetwood will also get some attention because he's in the best form compared to some of the other guys priced around him. Viktor Hovland, though, is not that same way. You've got Shane Lowry in quote-unquote better form. Guys like Daniel Berger that are rating out really well because of how they played recently. Hovland could go a little bit under the radar, and if so, I think it makes him one of the best plays that we have on the slate. Before we talk about our value plays, a few more top 10 bets that I've gone out there and mixed in. Do want to remind you where you can find all of these spreadsheets for yourself. That, of course, would be over there on my Patreon page, where you can download these with all my projections, all my modeling, shots gained metrics, course history, form, whatever you guys are looking for, to go out there and get your research process started. That includes every single bet that I end up getting to, which there'll probably be at least a handful that I go out there and add before Thursday. My entire player pool out there for GPPs, ownership when we have that update here over the next day or so, all at your fingertips for every single player that's teeing it up. So in these videos, I try and give you guys a good taste out there for your own process to go out there and get your own research started. But if you want to see exactly where all my money's going and exactly where my modeling is ranking out players, then the Patreon place is the place to be. So link in the description to go out there and check that out. But now let's go through some of our value plays towards the bottom end of the board. So next up, we got Taylor Pendrith, who is one of the best off the tee players players that we have in this field, and for whatever reason could just not buy a putt for his life. So if we go to the last 24 measured rounds, you'll see that off the tee gaining close to a stroke per round, which is near Rory McIlroy level stuff, gaining with the approach play, and in particular from 175 to 225, one of the best players that we have in this entire field. But the putter, as previously mentioned, has been his bugaboo, losing about a half a stroke per round there. Even if we zoom in, it really doesn't get all that much better. Still striping it with the ball striking, in fact, over a stroke per round now off the tee, which is one of the best numbers that we have in the entire field, but losing now 0.7 strokes putting per round. So that has been the issue lately. And you'll see that though he's not a gainer on Bermuda grass for his career, he's still 0.5 strokes better on Bermuda grass than what you've seen over the last 24 measured rounds. And the reason why that's important is that means that he's due for a little bit of positive regression to his mean, even if he's just a neutral putter out there at Bermuda grass this week, which is exactly where he's lined up for his career. That would be a marked improvement over what he's done lately, and that might not get him a top 10. This is an elite tier field, but if he goes out there and gains a stroke or two putting this week, that's enough for a top 10 with how well he's been hitting it. He's got the off the tee distance and the accuracy that you're looking for in this sort of field, and you're also looking for somebody that in this range isn't going to carry a ton of ownership. I could see guys like Tom Kim, even Wyndham Clark, Sepp Straka getting quite a bit of ownership here, but because Pendrith has had a few down performances lately, I think there's a chance that he goes a little bit overlooked. He's coming in off the missed cut over there at the Cognizant. That's the one that's really going to sting for anyone that played him last week. Even that T50 over there at the Genesis was, leaving a lot to be desired out there at a signature level event. So I think this is the buy low spot. You take him at a golf course that really fits his game and on a grass type that has also been favorable over what we've seen for him lately. Next up, we got Sahith Theegala down here at 7,400. Took him for a top 10 at plus 500, and the form for Sahith isn't going to be nearly as good as what you've seen for some of these other players. If you take a look at the last 12 measured rounds, you see that he's actually losing in the two ball striking categories, which would normally be a pretty big issue. In fact, his last 24 rounds really aren't that much better either. Still losing in the two ball striking categories, but he's a hit or miss feel sort of player. You've seen him go out there, have 3 or 4 missed cuts in a row, and go out there and nearly contend to win before. Now, that was mostly during his rookie season when he was even more variant than what you are now, but Sahith is a feel-based player, right? He's not a technical player that is like Billy Horschel. He's not, a technician that's going out there and checking his positions every single swing. He paints out there on the golf course. He's the pure artist like you see there with the Tiger Woods. And Tiger, generational talent, right? He didn't really have those down weeks. Other players that are field-based have those down times, and that's kind of what we've had for Sahith lately. But the thing with those sort of players is they normally snap out of it rather quickly. And in large field GPPs, I'm looking for upside down here in the 7K range. I'm no longer looking for safety like I'm looking for it there in that 9-10K range. 9-10K range, I want guys that top 5, top 10, right? I want guys that have a really high top 5, top 10 equity. Down here in the 7K range, you still want that top 5, top 10 equity, but you don't care about them having those low performances either, right? You got to bring on some risk to try and find some diamonds on the rough down here. And with Sahith, you've got a player that can be very streaky off the tee. When he has his best stuff there, he's both long and accurate off the tee, which would be super helpful at a golf course like this. And he's got the short game to take on the bogey avoidance aspect here as well. So this is a player that I'm expecting to be a little bit lower owned. It's not like there's a bunch of guys around him that are in amazing form, but guys like a Ben Griffin, Michael Kim, I think will take away some exposure, being $200 more expensive. But even guys like Denny McCarthy, Aaron Rye that are $100 cheaper could also take a little bit of attention away here. And long term, I think he's by far the best player out of these guys here in this range. And if so, if he's going to be lower owned than some of those other players, then I will be a really happy buyer over there in my GPP lineups. And then for our last play here, last value play is going to be Nick Dunlap here at $6,300. And I took him for a top 10 at plus 1,000. So 10-1 to go out there and finish in the top 10. And off the tee lately has been everything for him. He's just been going out there and losing a bunch of strokes off the tee, but every other category has just been great. I mean, you can see here the huge negative out there at the driving, over a stroke per round lost, but gaining close to 0.7 strokes per round on approach, gaining with the short game, which out first on tour had been a little bit of a weakness out there for Nick, but he's made that into a positive over his last few events. He's into the positive out there with the putter as well. And if you go to the last 24 measured rounds, so we even zoom out on the stat profile, it's much of the same, right? Off the tee, tee has been the huge bugaboo, still gaining on the approach play around the green and with the putter, and on these Bermuda grass greens has been absolutely lighting it up. For his career, gains about 0.6 strokes per round putting out here on Bermuda grass. If this guy can figure out how to just keep the ball in play this week, he's got all the tools to go low. And even if he doesn't, because it is kind of a no-cut event, and I put that in quotes because it is still the top 50 and anyone within 10 that makes the cut. If he makes it to the weekend, he is going to far outscore his placement when it comes to the birdies and streaks that he's posting. He's an extremely aggressive player, makes a ton of birdies, let alone the upside if he goes out there and keeps the ball in play. He's proven to us that he has, a few events a year where he goes out there and gains strokes out there off the tee, where he keeps the ball in play, capable of even gaining like 3-4 shots gained off the tee out there in any given event. He does that, and he plays like he is from fairway in right now. That's top 5 or even a win out there for Dunlap, and we know he has that kind of upside. So kind of like these 7K players like a Sahith, I'm willing to take on that risk. I know that if Nick has a bad week off the tee, he's missing fairways in that 4 or 5 inch rough, that he may actually miss the cut here, right? If that happens, so be it, right? I'm okay with that down here in the 6K range, because in my GPP plays, I am much more focused about their chances to get into that top 5. And compared to the other guys around him, he has a much higher ceiling potential than any of the other players in this range. So that's the reason why I love him out there in those sort of contests. And for the top 10 at plus 1,000, it's that same sort of idea. I need somebody who's actually capable of cracking the top 10 when they're playing some of their best golf. And you get that with a player like Nick Dunlap, that has that birdie or better firepower. Alrighty guys, that is all I've got for the DFS and betting preview. Go ahead, smash that like button if you guys haven't already, and also subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the content to come. That'll include, of course, our DFS and betting live stream, which will be over there Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time, where you can go over any of your questions down there in the live chat. We'll go through a weather report, some ownership, also some underdog and prize pick stuff if that's up your alley as well. So make sure to stay tuned for all of that. Subscribe so you're notified when we're going live, as well as best of luck with all of your exposure this week. We're gonna be doing a little bit of giveaway here as well out there for my Patreon page. So if you guys want to earn a free month access over there to all my tools, all my projections over there on my site, make sure to give me your winner for this week. They have to be at least 30-1 to go out there and qualify for the contest. So make sure to check the odds boards before you go out there and give me your best guess. But give me your winner. And like I said, first come, first serve basis. They go out there at least 30-1 to do so. You will get a free month's access to the Patreon. But that's all I've got, guys. I appreciate you guys showing all the support here on the channel as you guys always do. Best of luck with all of your exposure this week, and I'll see you guys for that live stream over there on Wednesday.